Mike Tyson is undoubtedly one of the biggest names in sports history. During the 80s, Iron Mike was a living legend. Only 20 years old, and he took out the defending heavyweight champ Trevor Berbick. The fight was a complete mismatch due to Tyson's brute strength and ability. From then on, Tyson went on to win 50 fights, 44 of them by knockout. His impressive career generated him almost $700 million in revenue, but in 2003, the struggling boxer had to file bankruptcy and somehow ended up $20 million in debt. How is that even possible? And more importantly, what could have been done to keep his wealth while still living the lifestyle of a champ? Welcome to our playlist of the richest person in the world, where we uncover where it all went wrong and how we can learn from the mistakes of legendary people who fell short due to a lack of knowledge and discipline. Now, let's begin. Before we judge Mike Tyson for squandering almost $1 billion, let's look at how the champ came up. Michael Gerald Tyson was born in Brooklyn, New York on June 30th, 1966, to Lorna and Jimmy Kirkpatrick. His father, Kirkpatrick, left the family when his son was only 2 years old. At an early age, Tyson joined a street gang and was in trouble with the law many times before he was 12 years old. After an arrest for armed robbery, he was sent to Tyrant School in 1978, a correction center for juvenile delinquents in upstate New York. It was there that his life changed direction. The school's phys ed teacher, Bobby Stewart, saw potential in the young Tyson and introduced him to legendary boxer trainer Cus D'Amato. Tyson thrived under the new structure and discipline in his life. Tyson moved in with D'Amato, and when the boxer's mother died at the age of 16, D'Amato became his legal guardian. Tyson made incredible progress as an amateur and decided to try out for the Olympic boxing team at the tender age of 17. He didn't make the 1984 Olympic team, but that just goes to show you, just because you face adversity doesn't mean you can't reach greatness. D'Amato decided that it was time for his fighter to turn professional. He entered the ring without any reputation, without a robe or even socks, dressed in black with a stone-faced look. Tyson went 15-0 in his first year as a professional boxer. Many boxing aficionados thought that D'Amato had created the perfect heavyweight fighter, but he would never live to see the man become champion. That 77-year-old trainer died in November 1985. Now the problem started. In 1988, Jimmy Jacobs, his co-manager, died, leaving Tyson without the surrogate authority figure that had been with him from the beginning of his career. Without Cus D'Amato and Jacobs around, it was easy for Don King, boxing's most notorious promoter, and Tyson's new wife, actress Robin Givens, to swoop in and take control of Tyson's life. While in the ring, the fighter was at the prime of his career, defeating former IBF champ Michael Spinks in a 91-second fight. But outside the ring, Tyson's life was spinning out of control. He broke his hand by smashing the like button on this YouTube video. By having a street fight with Mitch Green, then crashing a BMW into a tree on D'Amato's former estate, which according to some was a failed suicide attempt. Then there was the appearance with his wife on national television in a Q&A interview with Barbara Walters. There, Tyson sat next to Givens, looking half asleep as his wife talked about him as if he were a child. She went on to say that he was a manic depressive and claimed that he had abused her. Shortly after, the two were divorced. Then came his prison sentencing. Allegedly, on July 19, 1991, while attending the Miss Black America contest, Tyson met 18-year-old Desiree Washington. Tyson took her back to his hotel room and stuck his hand in the cookie jar without permission. He was found guilty, and in March of 1992, Tyson was sentenced to 6 years in prison, which he only served 3 years of. Then it was back to the ring for Tyson. Though many boxing promoters and managers had contacted the fighter in prison, it was Don King who negotiated a deal with Showtime on his fighter's first day out of prison. Then came the incident in the desert with Holyfield. After losing to Holyfield 7 months earlier, then came the rematch, which generated $180 million. The fight was in the third round, and Tyson had been complaining about headbutts from Holyfield, and out of desperation, Tyson bit down on Holyfield's ear and then spit out a piece of it along with his mouthpiece. Holyfield, clearly injured by the attack, continued on just to have his other ear bitten, and soon after, the fight was cancelled due to disqualification attributed by Mike Tyson's actions. Mike then had his boxing license suspended and subsequently fined $3 million for the incident. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. I mean, the fine. I'm sure the ear thing hurt too, and I hope the $3 million went to fixing Holyfield's ears. After that fight, financial troubles started brewing. Obligations including $13 million in debt and back taxes lured Tyson back into the ring through the late 1990s and early 2000s. One of Tyson's last notable fights was with Lennox Lewis, in which he tried to intimidate his opponent by stating, "I want your heart. I want to eat your children." Using this as fuel, Lewis took command early, and then in the 8th, he leveled Tyson with a hard right to the head. Even though he earned approximately $20 million from the Lewis fight, Tyson filed for bankruptcy in 2003. How could this have happened? Let's take a look at some of Tyson's extravagant spending habits that led him to be worse off than when he began his career. Tyson has reportedly spent about $4.5 million on cars and motorcycles, 19 of which he gave to his friends. He also purchased a Rolls Royce for $120,000, a Bentley Continental SC for $500,000, a Jaguar XJ220 for $600,000, and a Ferrari that he crashed on the first day he owned it. He then went on to buy the Lamborghini LM002, in which less than 300 were ever built. He also purchased the Aston Martin Lagonda. In total, Mike has owned more than 110 cars. There are even stories that he would lend his cars to his friends and forgot who he lent them to. Then he would send his employees to find out where the cars were. Some of those employees were being paid upwards to $300,000 a year. Yikes! Some other crazy spending habits included $100,000 per month on jewelry and clothes, $400,000 on pigeons and a variety of large cats such as the Siberian tigers that he owned, $125,000 a year for an animal trainer to take care of the big cats, $300,000 on lawn care and garden maintenance alone, $230,000 on cell phones, pagers, and phone bills, $2.3 million on a golden bathtub for his former wife Robin Gibbons. And finally, he allocated $240,000 per month for just walking around money for daily spending. In his autobiography, Mike told the story of how he once found tens of thousands of dollars he stashed 2 years previously in his laundry basket. After that, his employees would scramble to do his laundry. Now let's take a look at some of the homes Tyson splurged on. The famous 21-bedroom, 24-bath mansion in Connecticut that he paid $2.8 million for, and then he spent millions installing a nightclub and a casino, fitting it out in true Tyson fashion, which he later sold to rapper 50 Cent. He also purchased a 19,000 square foot mansion in Maryland, which he lost in a divorce to his ex-wife Monica Turner. A 5,800 square foot contemporary home in Vegas with 5 bedrooms and 6 baths and 3 fireplaces. Now, who needs a fireplace in Las Vegas? A 19,500 square foot mansion on 58 acres in Southington, Ohio, where he lived since the 1980s, which is now being used as a church. He also purchased a $4 million estate on 14 acres in New Jersey, and if that wasn't enough, he also purchased the 2 lots next door for $950,000 apiece. Now, how could Tyson have avoided all this? First, he could have subscribed to this channel. But well, as we all know, hindsight is 20/20, but if Tyson was educated financially and disciplined as much as he was in boxing, he would have seen huge opportunities all around him. Tyson has reportedly made almost $700 million in his professional career, so let's do the math. If he lost 50% of that to taxes and management, he would have been left with $350 million. Now let's say that poor guy found a way to live off of $50 million. He would have been left with $300 million to invest. Now let's take a look at some of the investments that were right under his nose. Tyson would regularly fight in Las Vegas arenas. One of those venues was the MGM. If Tyson would have invested his earnings in the MGM company, he would be worth $1.3 billion today. That's not bad. Next, Tyson was approached by major companies for brand promotions. One of those brands was Toyota, in which he could have bought shares in around $10, and today they're over $130 per share. That would have landed him a $3.9 billion net worth. Another major brand was Pepsi, in which they offered him $10 million for an endorsement deal, but then backed out when hearing about Tyson's alleged domestic violence and erratic behavior. If Tyson would have settled the score by buying up major shares, he would be worth $8.4 billion today and could have secured a place in not only sports history, but also among the financial gurus of the world. But the one that would have changed human history was the possible investment he could have made in this household brand that was on the come up in 1986. That company was Apple. Buying Apple stock through his illustrious career would have made him the richest person in the world by amassing a net worth of $248 billion, not factoring in dividends. Wow, Jeff Bezos, eat your heart out if Tyson doesn't eat it first. Today, Tyson is reportedly worth about $3 million and has pursued a career in business by opening up Tyson Holistic Holdings Inc., a company that specializes in the medical Mary Jane space, which reportedly rakes in about $500,000 a month. Unfortunately, Mike and his buddies contribute to about $40,000 of the sales when indulging on his podcast, Hotboxin with Mike Tyson. He also has plans to open up Tyson Ranch Luxury Resort, which is a 420-acre getaway for stoners. At Tyson Ranch, which is going to be in California, you'll find a hotel, spas, lodges, and a glamping park, and the world's longest lazy river snaking its way around the entire park as means of getting around. So even though Mike Tyson may have missed the Apple train decades ago, he might have learned his lesson and is now early to the MJ train. Only time will tell. And maybe it's not too late for Mike to gain his new title, not as heavyweight champ, but as the world's richest person. If you enjoyed this research into the life of such an amazing figure in human history, then tell us who you would like to see in our next segment of the richest person in the world. And don't forget to see more amazing videos like this. Click on our next video on the screen right now.